Welcome one and all to the Hammer Territory podcast presented by Fox One. Always good to be with you again. I know for us in Braves country, we would love to be talking Braves baseball right now, but that doesn't mean that there's some excellent playoff baseball going on right now as we speak. Me and Stephen Tolbert both are multitasking right now. Keep it up with the excellent playoff baseball that's going on, but here to talk Braves with you as well. And this is why the man is one of the best when it comes to covering the Braves and baseball in general. He can just multitask. He can do amazing things when it comes to enjoying and analyzing baseball. As always, the world's best podcast partner, Stephen Tolbert. Good talking with you, sir.
What's up, buddy? Yeah, man. Got a little playoff baseball over to my right. Got Yankees, Blue Jays on. We obviously got some topics to talk about with the Braves. We had some arbitration projections drop this week, which helps a lot for the content. We appreciate the boys over at MLB Trade Rumors. They always do a great job dropping those projections, and we're going to talk about them tonight. They have pretty big implications on the roster, of course, like any arbitration projection. We had some coaching news drop, so we're going to talk a little coaching news. The Athletic had some stuff this morning, actually, that came out that we're going to talk about. We're going to get a little playoff baseball. You know, it's October. We're just kind of grooving through the playoffs. The playoffs have been fun to watch. Obviously, it'd be a lot more fun to watch if the Braves were in it. But, you know, c'est la vie, such is life. And here we are. But we're going to get into it tonight. We appreciate it as always.
Yeah, and specifically when it comes to talking a little playoff baseball, three things that are really standing out from this postseason. None of these are surprising or anything else, but just basically traits that this Braves roster needs to regain to not only make the playoffs, but also, once again, have success in October. But let's talk about more important things when it comes to the early offseason. And of course, that is filling out the roster, filling out the 40-man roster. Brad, Scott, Steve, and myself, we've all talked about various aspects of how this 40-man roster will evolve early in the offseason. And one of the bigger, facets to follow when it comes to putting together your roster early in the offseason is when it comes to, contracts. These eligible players who are under your control, will you give them contracts for the next season? And of course, many of those players, as they get into service time, go into arbitration. And one of the things that many look forward to is the annual arbitration estimations from MLB Trade Rumors, and that was released yesterday. The Braves themselves are no short when it comes to these arbitration estimations. 9 potential players, could have been even more, but 9 players who will potentially be facing arbitration. Now, while it is 9 players, none are really that significant in terms of the main core for the Braves, hopeful success moving forward. But that doesn't mean that there's some relevant names where decisions need to be made. Stephen, let's go through them real quickly and then kind of, 9 total names. Let's go through them in groups of 3 to really give our determination of how we think their contract for next season will work out.
Right. So let's just get the kind of the nuts and bolts out of the way right off the bat. We'll just go through the names real quick and then we'll break them down by groups. So the Braves have 9 players, like Shawn said. It could have been more. They just, they just did outright waivers on Jared Kelenic and Luke Williams. They had that group of 5 players they just cut a couple of days ago. A bunch of those guys would have been arbitration eligible, but they're not on this list, obviously. So the 9 guys: Jake Fraley projected at $3.6 million next year. Joel Payamps projected at $3.4 million next year. Jose Suarez projected at $1.5 million. Alex Manoah projected at $2.2 million. Dylan Lee projected at $1.9 million. Eli White projected at $1.2 million. Vidal Brujan projected at $800K. Joey Wentz at $1.1 million. And Nick Allen at $1.5 million.
Yeah, and I think that order, again, Stephen went through the highest to the lowest, but also, as you have more service time, you're going to earn more money. It coincides. The higher salaries to the lower salaries also coincide with the guys with the most service time to the smallest service time. But that actually lines up perfectly for us to discuss these 9 players in groups of 3, because I think it pretty much lines itself up. When it comes to these decisions, I think that there are going to be some interesting decisions to be made. Several of these names you could see the Braves going either way on. But I do think that it's pretty clear when it comes to the names that you likely are okay moving on from, it's the guys who are the most expensive. Jake Fraley, Yoel Payamps, as well as Jose Suarez. And the reason why I think it's an okay decision to make, I don't think that you're necessarily going to bat an eye to moving on from those guys. I do think that like a Jake Fraley, for instance, could be a potential, contributor next year. But it's more about the fact that I don't think the Braves are going to be as cost conscious this offseason as they were last offseason. But that's still $9 million that if you move on from those guys, you could take to go contribute to more of a sure thing. And you need as many sure things as possible on this Braves roster. That's what I think is the big determining factor on those three guys. So Suarez, Fraley, as well as Payamps, I think it makes sense that the Braves will probably move on.
Yeah, you can make a case probably either way for Fraley. It's going to depend a little bit on what else they do. We've talked about in the past, I've said multiple times on this show that I want the Braves to go get a starting caliber outfielder, like a legitimate starting outfielder, and rotate that guy with Acuna and Profar at left field, right field, and DH. Now, if they don't do that and they just go with a traditional fourth outfielder, then Jake Fraley at like $4 million is probably fine.
Yes.
But if they do that, then Jake Fraley at $4 million for your fifth outfielder makes much less sense. So Fraley is very much tied to what else they do. He's a good player. $4 million is not terrible. But yeah, the other guys, none of these three guys have options. Fraley, Payamps, or Suarez. None of them have options. That matters. I don't know if Fraley would be option anyways, but certainly Payamps and Suarez, not having minor league options, not being able to be sent to Gwinnett is going to affect their value, because the Braves can pick up other guys who are probably similarly talented but have minor league options, which gives them the flexibility to do what they need to do in spring training, in season. Not having minor league options is just tough. So yeah, I agree. Fraley is more tied to what they do the rest of the offseason, but these other two guys, not having minor league options, being the most expensive of the group, probably not great for them.
Agreed. And it makes sense again because the Braves, they want to make sure that again they are going with as many sure things as possible, proven commodities. So as much money as they have to put towards proven commodities, it makes sense. That's why when it comes to Dylan Lee and Eli White, especially with how cheap they remain with their service time levels, I think that they clearly are shoe-ins for next year's roster. Maybe not so much Eli White, but I think it just makes too much sense that their projected costs not to go with them with the value that they add. Dylan Lee, obviously, perhaps being the most reliable part of the Braves bullpen over the past 5 years. Eli White, a very versatile bench piece. I think it makes sense to go with those guys. But perhaps the most intriguing name out of all these that we mentioned is Alek Manaea, who is projected to make $2.2 million, but he's so intriguing. And Steven, there's one other aspect about him that makes him potentially worth the gamble to see if he could regain some of his form that he had back from a top 5 Cy Young finish a few years ago.
Yeah, so these three guys, obviously, Alek Manoah, Dylan Lee, and Eli White, are probably your most likely to be back. Dylan Lee, I think, is probably a certainty, unless he got traded, but I don't see that happening. The big thing with Lee is he's a legitimate contributor to the team. The big thing with Manoah is that he has minor league options. And when you have minor league options, just like we were talking about with the two guys before, it's so much more valuable to the organization because you can be in AAA. And if you don't make the roster out of spring training, you can go to AAA. When you don't have options like Suarez or Payamps, you can't go to AAA. You have to either make the roster, you have to be DFA'd. It's just so much more flexibility. So, and again, Alek Manoah is a big name. He was a big talent. Like $2 million for that guy is pretty reasonable. Dylan Lee at $2 million is very reasonable. And then Eli White, again, it's going to be tied a little bit to what they do at outfield, but $1 million for a guy who can play center field, which is massive. Anytime you're talking about bench pieces, can they play center or can they play short? Eli White technically can do both because he did play a little short last year, as people remember. But that kind of defensive versatility is a weapon off the bench. He's got good speed. He's not a great hitter. He did hit for some power this year, though. I think he had 9 or 10 homers this year. So he's got talent. And again, he's dirt cheap. So you can do much worse than Eli White off the bench for $1 million to have backup center field, have an emergency shortstop. I think those three guys are, I would say, pretty safely the three guys I would say are most likely to be back.
Absolutely. And then we get into the more interesting decisions when it comes to Vidal Bruin as well as Joey Wentz. And I want to take a step back. Alex Manoah, excuse me, I said his last name wrong, but Vidal Bruin as well as Joey Wentz and Nick Allen, all of those guys projected around 1 million, Bruin a little bit lower. But I think that those guys, the reason why I'm not necessarily saying that it makes sense to move on from them is because at their cost, it could add value. Wentz as a starting rotation option with all the injuries that we've had recently. Nick Allen's defense, especially for a team that's looking to win, can be an asset. You can make a case for these guys making the team, but at the end of the day, I do think more likely than not, multiple of them, maybe all of them, they're going to get caught up in the numbers game. No minor league options. You're going to have, they're redundant basically for the 40-man roster, and that may be what ultimately makes it make sense to move on from them.
Yeah, so obviously the two shortstops, Nick Allen, Vidal Brujan, the thing that's going to work against those guys is two things. One, obviously the Braves want to bring Ha-Seong Kim back, and if he's a starter, then that only leaves a bench spot available. Two, the Braves also claimed Brett Wisely I can't remember if it was in August or September, but they claimed him from the Giants. He is an infield prospect, not prospect, he's like 26, but he's an infielder who can play shortstop, who can play second. The big thing with Wisely, though, is one, he is still pre-arbitration, which means he is dirt cheap. He is literally like league minimum type of player. Two, he has minor league options. So neither Nick Allen or Vidal Brujan have minor league options. Again, that's a big deal. Nick Allen probably has the best case here. Like he is legitimately such an elite defender at a premium position that that's a carrying tool that you can have on the bench. But I don't know that you can have Ha-Seong Kim, Brett Wisely, and Nick Allen all on the team at the same time. That doesn't make sense. Now, you could have Nick Allen as the backup and Brett Wisely in AAA because, again, Wisely has options, and maybe that's the way they go. So, that could certainly be the route they take. But Nick Allen can't hit. We know that for a fact. It's no money. He's not making any money, so it's not a big deal if you do keep him. But not having minor league options hurts all of these guys. That's why we think Manoah and Lee are such locks. Manoah specifically because he has those minor league options. None of the other guys do. There's going to be a numbers game in the infield. We'll see what they do with Nick Allen. I could probably be talked into either way. I'm fine if they pick it up and just put Wisely at AAA. The Braves don't have a ton of infield depth anyways, so you can make the case either way.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's more quantity than quality when it comes to these names. You
Correct.
can see several of them making sense, but also at the end of the day, if the Braves are checking some of the boxes early in the offseason of how they want to fill out the roster, you could also easily see it making sense to move on. It'll be all up to what new additions we see the Braves when it comes to the offseason. To have one ourselves. We do want to welcome Fox One as the new presenting partner for Hammer Territory. This show is brought to you by Fox One. Fox One is live streaming all your Fox favorites, including, as of right now, the American League playoffs and the World Series.
Yep. So Fox One, new presenting sponsor on the show. Very excited. Over to my right, as we speak, I have two American League playoff games. I've got the Mariners and the Tigers. I've got the Yankees and Seattle. Of course, Detroit and Seattle are in a 1-1 tie for the series. Whoever wins game 3 is going to take control of that series. For the Blue Jays and the Yankees, we have a 2-0 series. The Blue Jays are currently dominating the Yankees. So the Yankees are pretty much in survival mode. A couple of great pitching matchups. Because the Detroit-Seattle series is 1-1, we're guaranteed to have a game 4 tomorrow. That will be on Fox 1. And the Yankees are going to have to win this game tonight to force a game 4 tomorrow. But if they do and force a game 4, it will be tomorrow, and it will also be on Fox 1, as will the ALCS next week, and as will the World Series in about 2 weeks near the end of the month. So make sure you're checking out Fox 1 from MLB postseason, NFL on Fox to Big Noon Saturdays. With Fox One, you get all of it live. Start your 7-day free trial today. Go to fox1.com for complete terms and conditions. Fox One, streaming now.
Absolutely. Make sure you check out Fox One for all your favorites from Fox. And of course, when we speak of our favorites, one of the favorites for many of us for a long period of time, was Brian Snicker. I know some of us, we all had criticism of him when it came to how he managed and things like that. But I do think that overall, when it comes to him being a leader of the Braves, he was a fan favorite. He was someone that every favorite in the clubhouse. He is going to be a big hole to fill. Whoever takes over the Braves manager's role is going to have some big shoes to fill. And we're continuing to see this coaching search, this coaching carousel evolve. But today we received some news that kind of gave the indication when it came to the Braves, we shouldn't only focus on the managerial position being filled, because this coaching staff in general could see quite a bit of turnover. We'll get to that in just a moment. But the first bit of news that came out today was that the Braves were the only team of those with current manager openings who did not seek to speak with Skip Schumacher before he took on the role with the Texas Rangers. He's now the manager of the Texas Rangers. Stephen, I don't find that necessarily that significant, but it kind of indicates to me that Alex Anthopoulos, as should be expected, is going to keep things very close to the vest and is probably going to steer this search in ways that not many expect. In other words, all these names that, many national outlets are considering to be favorites for the Braves, that may not necessarily be the case.
Yeah, so Brittany Grilli of The Athletic today released her What I'm Hearing piece, which has become kind of an in vogue thing at The Athletic. They do that a lot, but hers was specifically around all of these managerial openings that have come up in the last week or so. And she had nuggets for everybody, but the Braves specific ones were: one, the Braves were the only team that has an opening that did not reach out to Skip Schumacher. Now, again, I don't know how much I read into that. Everybody kind of knew Skip Schumacher was going to be the Rangers manager. The Braves will tell you they hadn't reached out to anyone at that point. And if everyone knew he was going to be the Rangers manager, I don't really know how important it is that you reach out or show any interest. He got that job almost immediately after Boshi left. So I don't think showing interest in him was going to change anything at all anyway. So, take it for what it's worth. By far and away, the most interesting nugget that came out to me was that the Braves have granted permission for all of their current coaches to interview elsewhere. Now, is this surprising? No. It's very common when a manager leaves and there's uncertainty in the staff that you allow them to go interview for other jobs, because they might not have a job with you. And it'd be a pretty crappy thing to do, to not let them at least go interview for other jobs. What it does tell me, though, and maybe I'm wrong, I might be reading too much into this, and if I am, I'll admit it later. I do feel like that kind of points to them not hiring Walt Weiss as the manager. I do feel like this points to maybe more of an external hire, because I think if they were really just focused on Walt Weiss, I think they would have tried to keep the staff together as much as possible and maybe told them, like, hey, you're not gonna have to worry about going to find new jobs. We're looking at Walt Weiss pretty heavily. There's a very good chance we're going to try to keep the staff together. I might be wrong. They might still hire Walt Weiss. I could be dead wrong about that. But it does feel like they are kind of opening the door, and Braves fans should probably expect that Brian Snitker is not going to be the only member of the coaching staff that turns over this offseason. That's kind of what I'm expecting. Now, is it going to be David Ross? I don't know. We'll see. But when I read that, I got the sense that they're planning for and maybe even expecting quite a bit of turnover on the staff.
And I think that is kind of the direction that, we need to go in, because I'll be honest, over the past few months, I myself have kind of gone back and forth. I definitely feel strongly that the Braves needed to move on from Brian Snitker. They needed a new voice, a new approach when it came to the manager's seat. But when it came to Rick Kranitz, even Tim Hires towards the end of the season, I also was talking myself into, okay, I wouldn't mind seeing that combo back again, especially Kranitz. I know you feel the same way. But as much as we talk about during the Braves' run of success from basically 2019 through 2023, the continuity of our coaching staff being an underrated asset, an underrated strength of why we were so successful, the time's come where you need to embrace change. You need to embrace new voices, new ideas coming into the clubhouse, because we've talked about it all season, is that it's not just changing the manager. It's not just, reshuffling the roster. There are things about this organization, how this organization defines success and the value it places on certain sources for success, that needs to be updated. And that comes along with the change in the coaching staff. So certainly would like to retain Kranitz, especially if it makes sense. But I'm okay with not only going external when it comes to the manager, but also that manager bringing in coaches that he's comfortable with, that he feels is going to put him in the most effective position to successfully lead this Braves team back to contention. So I'm ready to embrace that, even if it leads to a lot of turnover for the coaching staff as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask Braves fans, I don't think anybody would be like heartbroken over the idea that Tim Hires is not going to be the hitting coach next year. Like I think most Braves fans would be like, yeah, fine, okay. Chipper Jones came out like last week and gave a very eye-opening interview where he said, like, I'm ready to be a full-time coach. Like that was not always the case with Chipper. He always was like, I'd rather be a consultant. I'd rather be a special assistant. I'm not really interested in the time commitment of a full-time coach. And they were asking about manager. He's like, I don't think I'm ready to be a manager, but I think I'd be a really good hitting coach. Like my ears perked up. I was like, all right. Like if they go hire like David Ross to be the manager and then hire Chipper Jones to be the hitting coach and get, Rick Kranitz back as the pitching coach, I'm like, all right, that's a pretty damn good staff. But by far and away, the most important name is Rick Kranitz. Like the pitching coach, he has been so good with the Braves. He has done an incredible job getting the absolute most out of whatever his talent level is. Whatever the talent level is on the team, he gets at least that much in production, if not more, and usually more. And that's just the mark of a good coach. That's really all you can ask of the coach. The coach has no control over what the talent level is, no control over real injuries, anything like that. It's just whatever I give you, are you getting the most out of it? And I think with the Kranitz, he has. So getting him back would be huge. But again, we have no idea. He could be interviewing for jobs right now because he wanted to work for Snitker. And, whoever you hire as manager might want his own pitching coach, might want his own bench coach, might want his own hitting coach. I don't know how much the manager controls that stuff, how much the front office controls that stuff. We're going to find out here pretty soon. But yeah, Chipper's level of interest in the hitting coach job and keeping Rick Kranitz are far and away the two most interesting parts of this. And, we're going to get news as it comes out in the next week or so about which guys are interviewing where. Other teams will leak it. It doesn't just have to come from the Braves. So we might get more information. It's going to be interesting to track.
Yeah. And not necessarily saying that a resolution is going to come soon because, if the Braves have any interest in coaches currently, in the postseason, that, plays a part timeline wise. But the big thing to know is that once it comes down the pipe, who the Braves are going to hire as manager, don't be surprised if we get, several updates when it comes to the coaching staff. And we could see a significantly different setup when it comes to the coaching staff going into 2026 and beyond. But speaking of 2026 and beyond, when we're talking about changes, when we're talking about what needs to change for this Braves squad to not only get to the playoffs, but have success, there's three takeaways so far from this postseason that I really think need to become areas of strength once begin for the Atlanta Braves. We'll discuss that more in just a moment.
Football is back, and so is your shot at big wins. With DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL, your game day instincts can score you real money fast. Here's the play. Just pick more or less on two or more player stats, or break out rookies to elite QBs, and unlock the upside that every snap brings. The better your calls, the bigger your payout. And here's the kickoff bonus. New DraftKings customers get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry on your first pick set. This season, play your player instincts, download DraftKings Pick 6 app right now, and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL. Play just $5, get $50 in Pick 6 bonus picks. Make the call, ride the upside in partnership with DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
So, Stephen, I know that it's now been 4 years since the Braves won the World Series. Well, almost 4 years. But we've talked about it quite a bit What was so successful? What were the reasons why the Braves, I think in the minds of many unexpectedly, won the World Series in 2021? And it's simple. It comes down to two things: bombs and the bullpen. That's exactly what it was. Dingers and delivering strikeouts. That's what it was. It was the ability to hit home runs at a better pace than your opponents while also getting strikeouts late in game scenarios. That's what led to so much success for this Braves team. And we are once again seeing that. I know it's been 4 years since the Braves won the World Series, but that stands out to me once again as being two critical areas of improvement that this Braves team needs to get dependability at once again. The ability to hit home runs. It's been shared time and time again. When a team homers more than their opponent, they win more than 80% of the time in the playoffs. And if you have a bullpen that can get strikeouts in critical situations, that's the best way to limit those home runs, which become even more valuable in low-scoring games. Hitting home runs and having a reliable bullpen, that's got to be two traits that need to come back to the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it all off season, or I mean, all regular season. Like, I want them to go back to hitting homers at an elite rate. I think it's the key to sustaining an offense when you have streaky hitters, and I think the Braves have maybe the streakiest collection of hitters I've ever seen. I mean, guys that can go cold for like months at a time. And when you have that, the idea that you're going to constantly have 3, 4, 5, 6 guys hitting at the same time and being able to move the line, as Snit used to say, and like stack together a bunch of hits doesn't work when you have that many streaky hitters. What does work is if you're hitting homers, you don't need 6 or 7 guys hitting. You need like 2 guys hitting. You need like 3 guys hitting because they can bop homers. And not only does that help you sustain streakiness during the regular season, but it's also how you win in the postseason. And you just gave that stat about out homering your opponents in the postseason. So the pitching is so good in October. It's so good. You have got Garrett Crochet, and you got Tariq Skubal, and you got Christopher Sanchez, and you got on and on and on, and Max Fried and Chris Sale. If the Braves ever get back, they're like, the pitching is so damn good in October. The idea you're going to string together 6 hits in a row in an inning is just, you're living in fantasy world. Like you got to get runs in quick bunches. A walk and a homer, boom, 2 runs. Another walk, another homer, a single and a home. Like that's how you score in the postseason. You're not going to stack a bunch of hits together. So yes, go back to hitting homers. The way this lineup was built to, I think that's why they did it originally. To be honest with you, is to have postseason success, and it's a big part of their 2021 success. I mean, Jock Peterson, in the NLDS that year, Eddie Rosario in the NLCS, Jorge Soler in the World Series, like they were bopping homers. And not only were they bopping homers, they were then using the bullpen to close out these games. And that's how you win in October, bombs and bullpen. If we're going to make a logo for 2026, I'm going to wear a shirt that says bombs and bullpen because I think that's how you win. You got to have starting pitching, of course, in the regular season and in the postseason. But in the postseason, your starters are going like 5 innings. And then you're bringing out a weapon of a bullpen. And that's what I want the Braves to get back to, a weapon of a bullpen. I don't think it was a weapon this year. I think they had to kind of protect it a little bit. And when you had to use it a lot, it got exposed. And I want to go back to having it be a strength of the team, one of the best bullpens in baseball and one of the best home run hitting lineups in baseball. Those are the 2 things I want for 2026. And those are the things I'm going to be looking for this offseason.
Yep. Again, here as we are discussing postseason takeaways on this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast presented by Fox One. And the thing that I'll say is this, is that those are 2 known things, right? Like it's no secret that if you've got an effective bullpen that can get strikeouts and you've got a lineup that can stack home runs in big moments, you're going to go far in the postseason. That describes what probably is the biggest current series in the minds of many right now, the Dodgers and the Phillies. The Phillies have had such good starting pitching, not now, but throughout their postseason run here recently, but their bullpen's not been able to get leads, and they're not hitting home runs like the Dodgers are. That's why they're down 2-0. So yes, it's critical to hit bombs. It's critical to have a big bullpen, but there's one other key area that this Braves team must improve on, and thankfully they did in the second half of the season. they've got to be able to consistently produce in situational opportunities, specifically creating and converting run scoring opportunities when those home runs are not happening. As you face good pitching in the postseason, and especially as you face it game after game after game, it's going to be hard to hit those home runs. So you've got to have multiple ways to win. Here is one of the biggest points as to why hitting with runners in scoring position is so critical. I feel like that I have absolutely harped on it over the past year plus. Of the 8 teams right now, all 8 teams that are still currently alive in the baseball playoffs, each of them were in the top 10 of WRC plus in run scoring opportunities this year. They had 8 of the top 10 WRC pluses when it came to being at the plate and run scoring opportunities. They were among the best in baseball, and not only hitting home runs, but being able to create and convert run scoring opportunities. This Braves team improved in that aspect in the second half of the season. It's got to carry over, because through 2019 to 2023, we were 11th or best in the majors. Last year, 21st, this year's 13th. We've got to be back in that top 10, and that gives you multiple ways of being able to win in the postseason.
And listen, a lot of the Braves being 13th was what they did in the second half, right? Like the first half, they were miserable. And in the second half, one thing I will say is they got on base a lot more. When they added Profar, when they added Kim, they got rid of some of the black holes at the bottom of the lineup that have really hurt this team. I think the Braves have to be really careful about, Alex has had this thing where he says, well, if the other guys are doing their job, it's okay to have 1 or 2 black holes at the bottom of the lineup. I don't agree with that. I think if you don't have, when you have a group of hitters this streaky, the idea that 7 of them are going to be doing their job all at one time, at any one time, is just, it's not going to happen. So I think you got to be careful about having too many black holes at the bottom of the lineup. Obviously, adding Kim helped a lot at shortstop. Profar helped a lot in left field. We'll see what they do in the offseason. But, yeah, they just gave themselves more opportunities. They came through more. They also started hitting a lot more homers in the second half. The second half really did look like, and especially August and September, really did look like what we're used to seeing offensively. It wasn't always that way, but it was much closer than whatever the hell the first half. I thought I was watching a different franchise. I didn't know what I was watching every night, but I was watching them lose 2-1 off great starting pitching and couldn't win a game because they couldn't score. So yes, going back, getting on base a little bit more. I love walk rate. Walk rate is one of my favorite stats. Their walk rate really jumped up in the second half, but they hit more homers. Homers are how you get through any sort of cold streak of your lineup. I'm a big believer that, I know fans, whatever, that, Braves too dependent on the home run. They got to diversify. No, hit homers. Hit homer. That's how you get through cold streaks. That's how you get through a postseason. You hit homers. And that's what I want to see in 2026, along with a bullpen that goes from being questionable to being a weapon. I think those are honestly, along with starting pitching health, I think those are the big keys going into 2026.
And the biggest thing of all is that the reason why we're talking about that bullpen being a weapon, that bullpen being dependable once again, is because it's not just about guys that can log you innings in the postseason. It's about guys that you can confidently use in matchups. That's how the Phillies were able to beat the Braves, pretty, convincingly in 22 and 23. They used their bullpen so effectively against our lineup. The Braves need to get back to feeling confident that in the right matchups, they can use their bullpen guys over and over again in a playoff series. Can't thank you enough for joining us here on this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast. Once again, presented by our new presenting partner, Fox One. Make sure you check out the Fox One app for all your favorite shows and sports from Fox. Of course, Stephen Tolbert, you can find him at _outliers on Twitter/X, myself at StatsSAC. Can't thank you enough for the support. Hammer Territory across all forms of social media, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. Until next time, go Braves. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Hammer Territory.